Good morning, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? Okay, let me I tell you what, I'm going to ask all you guys just to unmute yourselves here because I can't hear you sometime to know what's happening.
Hi, Linda. I can hear you.
Hi, Teresa. Hi, David. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I can hear you. Steve.
We can hear you. How you doing?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
How's everybody doing this morning, this afternoon, whatever time it is, whatever time zone we're in? So, anyway, we'll get started here in just a second. I was gonna wait and see if there's any more people in the waiting room because I tried to. This thing is always a little crazy. Oh, there is somebody in here. Let me let this guy in. I'm never sure if to use the waiting room or to use something. Hi, Nick.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
I think I just let that.
Yeah. He's connecting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's here. He just didn't have his video on. All right. So welcome to our first Greek Adoptee Conversations session 1. We're just gonna today. I want everybody to be able to have a voice in what we're doing in regards to advocating for all Greek adoptees and the activism that we want to, how we want to do this, how we want to go about this. Basically, what do we want from the Greek state? What where we are at the moment with them, and where do we go from here? And basically, as I had said at the bottom, we want to force the Greek state to take notice and to take action. As you all well know, that or you may not know, I mean, I've basically lived half of the last 4 years in Greece, and anything that happens there is extremely slow. It does not happen fast. If you think anything's going to happen in a few months or a few weeks, it's like it just won't. It's I get very frustrated with it because I'm I'm one of these people. I like to have things that are arranged, and I like to have a schedule ahead of time. And basically, people in Greece are just not that way. They're just real laid back. And even the politicians, it's very difficult to get them to focus on just one thing and to actually follow through with it. So it's just one of those things that's going to take some time to do. So we'll see how all of it goes. I just want to give you a reminder before we get started on this. Of course, today is our first session. We are trying this as a way of Greek adoptees communicating with each other and being able to talk and say what they feel about all of these various issues. So today is our first one and we thought we would do this like every 2 months. Our board of directors member, Meryl Jenkins, suggested it. And several adoptees, including Teresa, talked about, oh, well, this was great. We got to talk and tell stories and stuff like that. So we thought, well, why don't we just do this every couple of months so we can all get together and interact with each other and not just watch some video or some presentation by somebody. So on Saturday, November 13th will be our next one. And we tried to schedule it so it wouldn't interfere with Thanksgiving. And that we're going to have our Greek coffee hour. It'd really be 2 hours, but it's our Greek coffee hour. We're going to feature Greek adoptee stories and Greek family stories, because we do have a lot of Greek families that approach us for help, and they want to be involved with the Greek adoptees because they might match some of these people. So that's very important to include them, and so we'll have some of them too, and we'll be able to talk to each other, to hear each other's stories, to ask questions. Some of them may have done some searching and may have done something unique that might be helpful to you. So by hearing stories and exchanging, we can all support each other. We can also learn something. And then on our first one for the new year, Saturday, January the 15th, we're going to talk about the search for roots and reunion. And we're going to basically kind of go over how, where to start your search, how to go about it. We're going to talk to people who've already found family, who can give advice even about post-reunion sorts of things like navigating the culture and the language and all of that kind of stuff, plus people who are still searching, and it will all discuss all of that in that. So that's kind of where we are as far as like how we want to do this. Oh, I got some people in the waiting room. Let me let them in. Oh. And I don't know why we're not seeing all of them on my thing. It's probably just the way I've got this thing on here, the gallery view. I can't see everybody, but I see them when they come to the waiting room. So welcome to the people who just joined in with us just now. So we've just kind of going over things at the moment. So let's get started with, I know when we had the Greek Adoptee reunion, which was very well attended, and thank all of you for coming. We went over a little bit of our value statements that our main ones, we believe that the knowledge of their roots and their biological origins, are the basic human rights of all adoptees. We believe that Greek-born adoptees and Greek biological families deserve transparency from the Greek government, all Greek adoption-related institutions and organizations. We believe that we're entitled to unfettered access to our orphanage, institutional, organizational records, birth records, and copies of all of our documents. And by law, we should have those because in 1996 and again in 1997, they passed laws that were supposed to allow adult Greek adoptees to get access to their records and to get copies of them. So, and that's been an ongoing thorn in our side for decades now. Regardless of whatever happens, they still find ways not to give those to us. And now I've been told horror stories about people still trying to get records when it shouldn't be this difficult. So that's another thing that is in the works at this point to make that better. We believe we're entitled to a DNA database. If we have one, it would be great if the Greek state would somehow be involved in sponsoring or partnering with us or with any other NGO to set up a DNA database for adoptees and biological families at no cost to us. If they would just buy the test, I mean, whatever, some way to do this where we'd have a bigger database of people to match with. And then we believe everybody's entitled to Greek citizenship, which is a huge thing. We were all born there, so there shouldn't be any question about that we don't have citizenship. We ought to all have it, and it's unconscionable that we don't already. So that's another thing and plus it shouldn't involve a lot of problems for us, which shouldn't cost us anything because we were born there. As far as I'm concerned, that's the important thing. So I think what we need to start with is like what we want. So I wanted to hear from you guys because I'm going to be taking notes, because when I go back to Greece in October, because I'm home now, by the way, I think you can probably tell by the background, I couldn't figure out how to blur it. I know I did it last time and now I can't figure out how to do it. So you'll have to put up with the pictures on the walls back here and all of that. I just, when I go back to Greece, we've got a lot of things kind of in the works set up to meet with government officials. And I kind of want to hear from you guys because I think it's important that we have adoptees' voices in this, because this is our baby. This is our fight. It's not an academic fight. It's not some kind of virtual fight. It's like that we need to take ownership of this because this belongs to us, because we're the ones it directly affects. So I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what your thoughts are on each of these points. And that's why, I want to do this interactively so people can talk about this. The first thing I want to hear from you guys about is like, yes, I'm sure we all believe that the knowledge of our roots and our biological family origins are basic human rights of all adoptees. So my first question is, and you guys just feel free to jump in and unmute yourselves and jump in. It's like, what would you say to the Greek state about this basic human right? I mean, if you were going to say something to the Greek government, what would you say about this? How would you respond to that? How would you approach them with this particular statement? So, who wants to jump in and say something about that, or does anybody have anything to say about that?
How do they feel about us wanting it? Are they willing to, work with us trying to get our?
Yeah, I feel like they're responsive now, to a much greater degree than they've ever been before. Basically they've, in the past they've brushed us off because they, like, oh, you're really not great because you didn't grow up here. I've heard that before too from people. So, and I said, the irony of somebody telling someone who was born in Greece that they're really not great because you didn't grow up here. I think they're more responsive now because we do have the member of parliament who is willing to help us do this, which is a big thing. However, as I said, they all kind of move slow. So it's not, but I think this is now a good time because I think they're responsive to it. Plus, I think if we make it beneficial to them, it's like the politicians, and all of us probably know, they don't do anything, even if it seems like a good idea, unless it gives some benefit to them. So the benefit is like, hey, if you're the one that really pulls this off and gets us what we need, then by golly, we're gonna we'll vote for you. We're gonna vote for you. We'll be voting for you, and from here on out, because you're the one who did it. So not only that, we also have to make them understand how important it is that financially for them, because Greece is like I saw an article the other day about Greece being the graying of Greece, that everybody that lives there is getting older. And there's a lot of older people there. There's people like us that want to retire there. There's people that are, a lot of the young people have left because there's no jobs. And that's basically part of that's the government's fault for not making it more attractive for young people to stay there and to remain in Greece in their own country. A lot of them have gone, millions. I believe a couple of years ago, like 2 million young people had left to go to other European countries to work. So if they give us citizenship, there is a benefit to them. And so to answer your question, if they get us coming back, our kids get citizenship, we buy property there, we pass that on, our kids bring their friends, we got tourism going, we're able to vote, and all that. I think if we can explain all that, makes it beneficial for them. So to answer your question, I think now is the time to really push for this, because at least there's, in the 4 years I've been going to Greece, I've seen a huge shift in the attitude toward Greek adoptees when they come back home. So instead of being dismissive and like indifferent, people are much more open, people are much more friendly and much more apt to help you do something if you're looking for something.
Okay.
So I think so, I mean, I guess we all agree that it's a basic human right that we get to know where we're from. I mean, but is there anything that anybody specifically feels like we should say to the government about that?
Linda, as you know, I am not an adoptee. I am a supporter of the project. I have a cousin who is affected by this.
Right.
But since the Greek government is putting this big push on for diaspora all over the world, and they come out in public and say all of this, what do they say in reference to this situation? I mean, we're talking about all of these adoptees with, I mean, as far as I realize, most, if they know about it, have passports. So what are they saying that is holding up this whole situation? How do they address it?
Well, basically for years they haven't addressed it, or a lot of adoptees have gone to their Greek consulates to see, well, we were born in Greece, we have a Greek passport, what's the deal? How do we do this? And then they've been met with rudeness in a lot of cases. They've also been met with like inconsistencies through all of the consulates because none of them tell them the same thing. Like I have one of our adoptees went to the Chicago consulate wanting to get her citizenship, and they told them, they said, well, I don't know why you're doing this, because you didn't grow up, you're really not Greek because you didn't grow up there. That's like I said, the irony of that, telling somebody who's born in Greece, who's probably more Greek than the person they're talking to, tell them they didn't grow up there, so therefore they're not Greek. So their attitude has been really not very nice. I mean, they haven't embraced that whole thing. They haven't attempted to really help most of us in regard to anything, in regard to citizenship records, whatever. And they're, like I said, they've been kind of indifferent, dismissive for most of the part. It is changing because now people seem to be much more open to it. And our generation, like if the older people in Greece are still a little reluctant to accept back their child they gave up, most of the people in our generation want to know that family member that's missing. So, but the government is, the fact that somebody in Parliament wants to help us is great, because it starts there, because there's going to have to be some kind of bill that's introduced to do that, to blanketly, to somehow cover Greek adoptees, because there isn't anything specifically in the nationality code that covers us right now, except for the fact that the two sections in there, one that, like, if you get your citizenship by either being born to parents who at least one of them was a Greek citizen at the time of your birth, or if they weren't Greek citizens, you were born in Greek territory, meaning Greece and any of its territories, and you didn't acquire a foreign nationality at birth. I think both of those cover us, because there's a lot of us that can prove we were born to a Greek parent in Greece, or none of us acquired a foreign nationality at birth, because by the time we got adopted and went to America, we had to live in America for 24 consecutive months before our parents could even apply for our citizenship. So we didn't acquire. So I think we're covered by that. But there was a webinar last year about dual citizenship, and somebody brought up, well, what about Greek adoptees? What do you do about that? And the assistant minister of the Interior, whoever was there, he was just like, I don't know, maybe DNA, I don't know. And it occurred to me just watching him, it had never occurred to him, that question had never occurred to him.
They don't know how to handle this situation.
Yeah, they don't have a clue. And that's why I said everybody's inconsistent.
And there's a huge shift in every embassy right now, as I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah, there was a shift in all the ministers too. Like after all this whole debacle with the fire stuff, they shook up all the ministries and they moved everybody around. And that's another reason why we still haven't talked to the ministers we're supposed to, because now they shifted them all around. You got to wait for the new guys to get in there and kind of get their feet wet before you can go talk
and every embassy here in the United States has been changed out. As I found out, I deal with the New York embassy, and they're all shifted. Everyone: New York, San Francisco, Houston, Chicago.
Right. Well, the good news for that is that the good news for that is that everybody, I want to make sure, there's several people trying to get in here and I can't understand why they can't get in. Okay, it says they're joining now. Okay, perfect. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, the good news about that is that, like, the people that we're in contact with at the Greek embassy, the actual Greek embassy that's over all the consulates in Washington, they're still the same people. So that's a good thing. They haven't changed them around yet. And Madam Papadopoulos, or Papadopoulou, if you say it correctly in Greek, because she's a woman, she's very touched by all of this, and they're very responsive if we say anything to them or we need help. And they've told us if during this process, if there's anything they can step in and do, they're willing to do it. So I stay in touch with them, and actually I have a few things I need to broach with them about some of these appointments with these various officials, like, can you speed that up just a little bit? So I think but they had the big shakeup, you're right. And that a lot of that was in response to the terrible handling of the fires in Greece this summer. They figure anytime anything goes wrong, they have to figure they shake up something. They move all these ministers to actual positions they know nothing about, which is even worse. And this is what they did. They just took people out of the positions they were in and just put them somewhere else. And that doesn't really solve anything. So we kind of have to wait for them to get settled. So I'm hoping by the time we go back in October, they will be a little more settled and we can get a little more, something going that's a little more solid at that point.
Linda, are the people in Greece that you're working with, are they aware that the Greek adoptees are contributing members of society here and travel to Greece often and realize the benefit of those 2 points and more?
I've broached that with our member of parliament, and he agrees with me about that's definitely, it's a win-win on both sides, because it's mutually beneficial to Greece and to us. And I've said multiple times when people have asked, I've said many times that Greece gave away some of its best and brightest children, because almost all the adoptees that I'm acquainted with are extremely talented, they're creative, they're extremely smart. And, Greece really did itself a disservice by just shipping off thousands of its children after the Cold War and after the Civil War and during the Cold War period. So I think they know. And again, like I said, they've lost so many of their young people that Greece is getting older. Like Greece is aging. Like the majority of the population is middle aged or older. So it's a way, I think, for them. I think if they can look at it from your point of view and from the point of view of most of us, that having us come back and having us be, coming to Greece, we're putting money into Greece, we're buying property, we're doing this or whatever. Our children are going to get citizenship if we get it. And then they'll pass on that property. They'll be taxpayers. Right. I think that, I think they're aware, but it just has to be pounded home to the rest of them. I think the people we're working with are well aware of that, but I think it's got to be pounded home to them that this is like a symbiotic relationship. It needs to be mutually beneficial, and it should be. And I really think in the long run, they'll realize that. Again, they move so darn slow. I'm one of these people. I want to get it done. I want my schedule laid out. I want to know what I'm doing. It was kind of chaotic this last trip. It wasn't easy to do a lot because of those fires. All of the ministers and all the government people were tied up with all of that, which of course they had to attend to first. That's, they had to save life and property, hopefully. And, so that kind of put things on a little bit of a delay because of that. But I would think by the time we go back in October, we should be able to meet with these people that we need to meet with and get something going within the parliament where they can start with some sort of bill or something to cover us, especially about the citizenship. All right. So another question I have for all of you is like, oh wait a minute, I'm back. I skipped back the wrong way here. Here we go. We believe the Greek-born adoptees and their biological families are entitled to transparency from the Greek government and all of the Greek adoption-related institutions. So in terms of what you guys feel about all of that, what does that transparency look like to you from the Greek state and the institutions? What does it look like, and how would that best be achieved for transparency? And I'll just start off really quickly with what Merrill Jenkins said, because he's actually at a Missouri football game right now, and he said he was going to try to pop in with us during halftime. So hopefully he'll be here. But he said that, for a problem to be solved, somebody has to recognize first there is a problem, and then they need to take steps. They need to admit it and take steps to correct it. So for him, that's what transparency is, like recognizing the problem, admitting there's a problem, and then doing something about it. But as far as like transparency, and that's true, that's not exactly transparency, but that's at least them admitting something's not right and that they need to help take care of remedy this. But to you guys, what do you want in terms of transparency? What do you want from the Greek government? Because I'm taking notes, and I'm going to include a lot of this in the formal statement that we're having to prepare for the Greek government, because evidently we have to tell them what we want and actually how to do it. So that's what I want to hear from you guys. So somebody jump in if you want to say something about what's transparency to you.
Linda, if I just ask, I think you've explained this before, but when I went in 1983, I feel like it was easier for me then than it is for people now to locate people. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, you're correct.
Did it change somewhere? Why did it change?
You're absolutely correct. And most people I know that went in the early 80s were able to, like, the records were wide open. People gave you stuff. You didn't have trouble getting things. And then I think some of the higher ups that were older began to be embarrassed by all of this. I think a lot of it was embarrassment. Like, they didn't want to embarrass the Greek state because the government was complicit in all this anyway. So they didn't want to get embarrassed. And then they've since then passed various privacy laws. But the latest one, which they're using as an excuse now to not give us records, even though it has nothing to do with our records, was that new GDPR law that is this privacy thing for the whole EU. So they all have to abide by it as EU member states. And it makes a lot of the institutions are using that to not give us records or to not give us our birth certificate or whatever it is. Like, you know, and again, that we already have existing laws that say if you're an adult adoptee, you get your records, you get copies of them. And there's also a Greek law that says if your name is mentioned in a Greek document, you're entitled to a copy of that document. So there's plenty of laws on the books, and that privacy law shouldn't supersede that. Like, that's not, because you're not asking for other people's information, you're asking for information that pertains to you, and you have a right to know that. So I think over time, people, as more Greek adoptees begin to wake up and decide they wanted to look, I think then it became almost like an embarrassment to them, and they just wanted to sweep it under the rug. So then they became less open and less forthcoming. And then even in '96, when they passed these laws in response to Maxine Deller and all the people then in '96 that were protesting about the fact that they couldn't get records and stuff, that's when they hastily passed these laws. Again, when they passed them, they did not allow for any sort of they didn't say how you had to get your records. They said you have to give them records and you have to give them their copies, but they didn't say how you had to do it or when you had to do it or anything. So there was no set way for anybody. That's why all of them do something different. Every single institution, even though they have all these same laws they operate on, they do whatever they want. So there's no consistency, even in the GAK, which is the General Archives of the State. The one in Athens is basically the boss of all the other GAKs in all the regions. And yet the one in Thessaloniki does its own thing and doesn't respond to what the GAK in Athens tells them, even though they're the boss, basically. You know, like the GAK in Athens will accept a power of attorney in English with an apostille, has no problem with that. They say if it needs to be translated, the Foreign Office will do it. We'll accept it for the papers. And then the one in Thessaloniki wouldn't accept it and wouldn't give any papers to anybody unless they're the adoptee, even though the adoptee couldn't come to Greece and get them. And the GAK argued with them about that. So there's inconsistency across the board in all these institutions. Nobody does the same thing. If they would just be consistent, it would be a lot easier. But in answer to your question, it has changed over time, because I think up until about the early 90s, things were fairly open. And then they started to kind of just close down, especially when that big scandal hit in '96 again, when that became a big thing. And then that was, oh, this is embarrassing. We need to like not talk about this. And that's when they started to give you a synopsis of what your life was in the orphanage. Like, here's a synopsis of your social history. And they would write it themselves on their letterhead and send that to you and not give you any copies of papers that even backed it up. And so, you know, that's not right either. How do you know that synopsis is even true if there's no papers to back it up? They can just write anything they wanted. So, and some of them still do that. The Patriarch's office orphanage is terrible about that. They'll write, they don't send you a copy of your ledger entry. They don't send you a copy of your note or anything else. They just send you a letter. Oh, this is what your note said. Here's your social history. That's it. So, you know, they still do stuff like that. That's really not what they're supposed to do. But you're correct. You were lucky you went early because you probably got more out of it than most of us did. So, so transparency, guys. It's like, is transparency for y'all similar to what Meryl is? Like, admit that this happened, so basically say you're sorry and then do something about it. Is that what all of you kind of feel like that's what transparency means?
With a little bit more. I think transparency also implies accountability, and there's not going to be any accountability if there's no enforcement. So, right. So if the Parliament isn't going to go to Thessaloniki and demand and require without consequence, you know, that they release these records, then they're going to continue to do or not do whatever they want. So I would think that there needs to be some kind of enforcement, but kind of on the other side of the same coin. How about some incentive? Is there a way to provide incentive for these government officials and even individual citizens to feel okay about providing to us what we ask without feeling threatened. I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Right. I think at this point, because of that GDPR law, like they use that as an excuse because none of them really understand it. And they don't understand the law that says we can have our records. Because I did when we had the meeting with the, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later too, but we had the meeting with the people about the records and they're working on the process now, supposedly. I got to check in with them again because, if you don't stay on them, they won't do it. So they're supposed to be working on this process. It's going to take some months to get in place where it's centralized and easier for us to get our records in relation to all the laws and stuff, because if they can do it through the ministry that's over all that, it works. But again, they asked me about, well, we understand that you have a right to your records, but what about your biological parents' right to privacy? What if you show up on their doorstep? I was like, I don't think the majority of adoptees I know are just going to show up on some Greek person's doorstep and say, hey, I'm your child. I mean, for one thing, if they're that old, they don't speak English. I can just about guarantee you. And if you don't speak Greek, how are you going to talk to them? And I told them, I said, even when we're helping somebody and we try to approach a family that we're pretty darn sure it's their family, we don't just show up at their door. I don't call people on the phone. Because I don't know these people. And Greeks consider it's rude and intrusive just to call a stranger like that, So I think the whole thing, the lady did ask me about that right to privacy. And I'm like, well, we have a right to know who our parents are. I said, nobody's gonna just show up and say, hey, I'm your kid. They're not, because I think all of us realize that sometimes our mothers may have been forced to give us up and they have another life now. And we don't want to disrupt that. I already had that in my head when I looked for my family. If she didn't want to see me, it was going to be fine. I mean, maybe she had another family. Maybe she didn't want them to know. I mean, I don't know. And I certainly didn't want to disrupt her life, but I figured there'd be other family members. If she didn't want to see me, there'd be other ones that would. So, and that has turned out to be true in a couple of cases that I know of personally. The birth mother didn't want contact, but they got contact with all their first cousins or half brothers and all these other people. So, you still have contact with family that way. But I think the accountability thing is absolutely true because they need to be accountable and they need not to arbitrarily or capriciously decide, oh, I'm not going to give you your records because I don't think you need them, or I think this is like an invasion of your birth mother's privacy. Well, she had me and I was her kid. So that's really not an invasion of her privacy and my name's on those documents. So by law, you're supposed to give them. But it's just like, the problem is you're right about the enforcement, but this is true about all Greek laws. They have all kinds of laws on the books and they don't enforce any of them. That's why Greeks just do all these weird things that, when it comes, okay, I'll give you an example. When it comes to renting an apartment or something, people don't want to pay their taxes. And I don't blame them. Their taxes are like 24% on their value added taxes. It's ridiculous. So they rent an apartment and they say they're going to rent it to you for 300 euros a month. When they make the contract, they put something else in the contract so they don't have to pay so many taxes. They put like 100 euros a month. Now, that's not really legal, but everybody does it and nobody does anything about it. It's just an example of the fact that they don't enforce what they should, so that, you brought up a good point. That's a problem. Enforcement is a problem. So, but again, if you've got, it's like anybody, like if you either are a law-abiding citizen or you're not, right? I mean, you're either going to obey laws or you're not going to obey laws. And Greeks like to skirt around the laws a lot. They do in a lot of ways. I love them, but that's how they are. So, but it's absolutely right. They need to be held accountable. It needs to be enforced. And if we can make a big enough stink, maybe it will be. That's the thing. It's like, my dad always used to say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. That's pretty much true. Like if you just sit there on your hands and don't do anything, well, they're never going to do anything, So, and again, again, in relation to adoptees in general, like when I've been in Greece trying to get records and stuff, of course, with the GAK and all that with COVID, they had appointments. You couldn't go in there. They were closed half the time. But even in the best of times when there's no COVID, it's still really slow. A lot of things are really slow. It's difficult a lot of times to get things done. You can't get anything done quickly in Greece. And that probably is the thing that frustrates me the most, because I'm hyper. Y'all can probably all tell that. And I want to get things done. I don't want to sit on my butt and do nothing. If I got this in my head, I want to get something done. I want to get it done today, not next week. Because if a Greek tells you, I'll call you in a couple of days, they mean next week or the week after. They don't mean 2 days. You know, in America, if you say, I'll call you tomorrow, generally you call people. That doesn't happen in Greece. I'm going to call you in the morning. Okay, all morning long, nobody calls. And about 2 days later, hey, what's up? You know, that's just how they are. So I think we're battling a couple of things here, and that's one of them. It's just like they don't get in a hurry to do anything. So, but you brought up a couple of good points, and I wrote those down. I've been writing down what people were saying, because we're gonna incorporate all of this, because this is, like I said, this is our fight together, and I want you guys' voices in this. This isn't my project or the Eftychia project's thing. This is for all of us, because if you want to know the truth, I don't have any personal gain out of any of doing this, because I already found my family and already have my citizenship. But I want you guys, because it was such a wonderful thing for me. I love Greece. I don't know if you guys feel the same way I do, but I would love to go permanently to Greece for the rest of my life and sit on my front porch and look at the sea and just enjoy my life. I love Greece. I love the people. I love the language. I love that culture I missed that I didn't have all those years. And if you guys feel the same way, you know, then this is worth fighting for. And that's, you know, I want every one of you to feel the way I do about our home country, because I never imagined I'd ever even go to Greece or even look for my family, because I did have a wonderful childhood, wonderful parents who I miss every day. But when I set foot on Greek soil for the first time, I didn't want to leave. And every time I go, and I kid you not, every time I land in Athens, I cry. And every time I leave, I cry, because it means that much to me. And to be in my homeland and to recapture all of that I miss. Not that my parents didn't, you know, they didn't prevent me from knowing anything about my Greek culture or my Greek heritage, but I didn't grow up around any Greek people. We didn't know any. So it wasn't like they did it on purpose. We just didn't know any people in the area that we ended up moving to. So I just want everybody else to feel that, and to get that. And so that's why this is important. This is our fight. It's not my fight. It's not the Eftychia Project's fight. It's just that by being a registered nonprofit organization in America and having a lot of presence in Greece, because we do get a lot of press in Greece, and a lot of people know who we are. We've got over 4,000 followers on the Facebook page. Half of them are probably Greek people. You know, by doing that, it gives us a little bit of clout to use that to push what we want. You know, so that's the whole point of using the project to do that, instead of just because people can, you know, you can complain and gripe that you don't have this or that, you know, all day long. And that's happened with all these little small groups of Greek adoptees that's been on Facebook and stuff. But you got to come together at some point and push for something that's important. And you got to at some point to do something. And that's the thing. I feel like it's time to do something, and the time's right for us to do that. So those of you that are having problems with records and stuff, like getting your records, what would it mean to you personally to have that ability to get those records easier? And what methods or procedures do you think would work best in obtaining those records? Because as I said, they want us to present a formal statement of what we want from them, but they also technically want us to tell them how to do it. We shouldn't have to, but if we wait for them to think it up, we'll be waiting for a really long time. So what would that mean to you guys personally? And what do you think, what sort of things should we tell them that, you know, yes, we want the open records, blah, 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 but how do you think what we should say to them that would be a good way to make this easier for all of us?
Other than bringing money in when we visit and, you know, boosting their tourism, what do we have to offer them? I mean, the transparency, if they're not really willing to fully admit what's been done, I mean, what kind of leverage do we have, you know, to ask? I mean, we've all been we've all gone there and that, I'd love to move there, but it's almost like they still want it to be a secret. So, you know, how do we have that leverage, or what can we use as leverage against it?
Well, for one thing, banding together, all of us together, banding together and doing this together makes a huge difference, because, you know, many voices make a really loud roar when you join them all together. So the more we push and the more we talk about this, the more people do things. And I've got some suggestions toward the end of this we're going to talk about that you can do to help to get this done, because there's a lot of ways individually. All of you we'll still be working together, but individually there are things you can all do that's going to help too in the long run. And I'm going to tell you about some things that I have in mind, and there may be some other things that you guys have in mind that you think will help. But I think the thing is for so long, we all went individually to Greece. We went, you know, somebody went, like David went in the 80s, somebody else went in the 90s, you know, somebody went in the early 2000s. I went in 2017. And then the whole thing is like, we've always had, and then somebody's story comes out, oh, this is great and all this, yeah, we need to do something, and then it fades away. The same exact thing happened in 1996. When Maxine's story came out, there was a huge thing on, you know, the New York Times wrote a story and all these people were included in that story. A bunch of different Greek adoptees were interviewed. Then they went on Maury Povich or something, I don't remember. They were on several shows. They were in People magazine, and that lasted about a year. And then it just kind of faded away. And then there'd be another, something would happen. Oh, it would come back again, and then it would just kind of fade away. The problem is like now we don't want it to fade away. This is like, we want to keep this going. This is not the time to just make a big splash and then it just like dwindles off into the sunset. So I think the leverage is once we can make these appointments with these ministries that we need to talk to about the citizenship, because there's certain ministries that are over citizenship. There's a certain ministry over the records. There's a certain ministry over that would be over the DNA database. And I'm not sure who that would be. It's either going to be the one with the orphanages, or it possibly would be the interior. I'm not sure. That's one thing we'd have to explore. You know, I think with all of us together making a noise, that makes a huge difference. And the fact is, they need to know we're not going away this time. We're not going to just fade off into the sunset. Oh yeah, we made this big splash and everybody paid attention for a little while. Now nobody cares. And there's a lot of ways to keep that in the forefront, and we'll talk about that too. So I think records, and to most of you that haven't found family and don't have a lot of records, getting those records may give you a clue to your biological parents. Some of you know who your biological parents are because you were fortunate enough to have a paper that has their names on it. But some people have no papers, and being able to get even those court papers, a lot of times those court papers from the court of the first instance in Athens or in Thessaloniki will say who your biological parent is. Mine did. Mine said I was the illegitimate daughter of Eftychia and Nuala. I didn't know that till I got those papers, but they're, you know, that because I thought my mother was dead, because that's what the lawyer said.
What papers were those, Linda?
Do what?
What papers are you referring to? Was it in the
I'm talking about court
adoption
papers, about the
papers?
adoption decree. I'm talking about the adoption decree. A lot of times we'll tell who your biological parent is. Not always, but they sometimes do. They sometimes will have your biological parent's name on it.
So there's more. So there's more papers than what my parents got.
There's
when they
generally in the
were
courts.
there and
In the
adopted
courts,
me,
there's
you think?
In the courts, there's generally like 3 sets of papers. There's a petition for your adoption, the first trial for your adoption, and the second trial, which is actually the adoption decree. So most people, not always, but most people had 3 different court appearances by their lawyer, because most of us were adopted by proxy anyway. Our parents didn't go to Greece. So those papers are the court papers. Often will say the child. For example, in my case, it says the child, the inmate of the orphans asylum number whatever, Eftychia, the illegitimate daughter of Eftychia and Nuala, of Stronima. Sometimes it says where they're from, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it says not only the biological mother's name, but her father's name, because in Greece you are ever the child of your father. Your father's name, I have to put down my dad James, because that's the only dad I know that I have is my adopted father. I have to put down his name every time I do any kind of contract or anything else. My father's name goes on there, and it's even though I've had my name changed and everything, you know, where all my stuff matches, it says Linda Carol Trotter, daughter of James Forrest. It is like, so I don't think my poor father would have ever thought he'd ever be on any official Greek documents at all. But by getting those grandparents' names sometimes on there, that helps you find people, because people children are named for their grandparents. So if you can find people in Greece that have the same name as grandpa, you might, and your family name's not real common, you might be able to find somebody. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways for that. But anyway, there are a lot of records. There's the court records. You've got the orphanage records that are possible to get if you can get them to get them to you.
Yeah, that's what I want too.
And there's birth records. Like, you have a birth certificate that's filed somewhere. Everybody does. Even if it doesn't say anything much, it's still a birth certificate. So you still have those. So that's those kind of things to get. And what do you guys think about the DNA database? Like how that, how is that going to benefit you personally, which I think I probably already know, but I want to hear from you guys. And how this database should be structured. How should that be structured as far as like and administered? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that question, because I have talked to somebody who did one with in collaboration with the Korean government for Korean adoptees. And their feeling is that the government shouldn't have total control of it because they'll mess it up. That's basically what they said. So what they did is, with their nonprofit Korean adoptee organization, they partnered with the Korean government, and they basically, the Korean government gives them support, furnishes kits, buys them from whoever, 23andMe or whatever, and supports them. But they don't run it because the Korean adoptees have reasons not to trust the government about like we do, but they were afraid the government might actually try to tell you match somebody when you don't. Now, I don't know if the Greek government would stoop that low, but evidently that was an issue with them. So, but they said it seems to run more efficiently when you don't have the government totally running it. So what do you guys think about that? I'm curious to know your thoughts about if we had the database and it was free to all of us and to the Greek families, because that's how we match them a lot of times if we have no paperwork. What's your thoughts on that?
A joint effort between, us and them. Somebody overseeing, making sure, on each side that things aren't being, withdrawn or hidden. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
We've sort of, I will tell you that we sort of got our own miniature database kind of so far with the Eftychia project, because we're almost at 75 DNA tests in a year. Like, we just started last year doing this. And so we're almost at 75. And the majority of those are Greek families that are looking for people. So that's a good thing. And really and truly, we shouldn't be having to drive around Greece collecting all this stuff. This should be, the government should. I don't mind doing it if the government was involved with it. I don't mind doing it at all. I'm not saying I mind at all, because I do it every time I go. I'm meeting with Greek families who are telling me their stories about their lost child and who they're looking for and all of that. And of course, the more Greek DNA from Greece that we get in the DNA pool, the better off we are. Because, for example, I will say that even if the person doesn't, let's say the person doesn't find the child they're looking for, because we are also interrelated. If you suppose that guy that I just got DNA from, the last person I got DNA from before I left Greece, he doesn't find his sister that he's looking for, but one of you wind up being his second cousin, which is entirely possible, because many of us adoptees are fourth cousins. Many of us are. We're all related.
Wow.
So because Greece was such a small country, it only had like 6 million people when most of us were born, and these village people all married each other. I'm related to, I can't tell you how many adoptees, but like fourth cousins. So if you're his second cousin, he can still be of help to you, because that means his one of his grandparents and one of your grandparents are siblings. Figure out which sibling, then one of their children is your mom or your dad. So like it behooves us to get as much Greek DNA in that database as we can. And then so that's important. And the problem with Greece is they don't understand the importance of DNA. You try explaining this to somebody who speaks English is hard enough. Try explaining it to a bunch of Greek people that don't speak English. It's difficult at best. So, and they don't really understand, like, what do I need DNA? I know who my family is. I'm like, yeah, you don't really know who your family is, because I can definitely tell you that there have been multiple times that people have realized that their father not only had a wife, but he had 2 or 3 girlfriends on the side. And that's where some of us came from. So Nick, you have your hand raised. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So I understand, I think partially on the database, but each one of the DNA companies has a database. I don't need to see a Greek database for everyone that tests in Greece, because I guess maybe selfishly, and you can chastise me if I'm being too selfish, but only children would kind of go that way. Okay. I certainly lean left, but I also lean towards myself too. But anyway, so for me, about all I have to search is DNA, because my records are slim to none, and what I do find are fabricated, and so who knows what they really mean. But so that's enough of my pity party. But what I'm trying to say is, so when I get results, I go to MyHeritage or 23andMe or Ancestry, or whoever it may be, and plus they do the work for me. You have a new relative, other than it's 57 times removed, so it's not very close. But so I mean, the database exists with each one of these companies. So I don't know. I guess maybe maybe you need to explain it to me better, or you can do it separately and not make everyone nuts while we explain to poor little Nick that doesn't understand anything. But the database thing, the companies are doing a database. And so each one of us has that opportunity to go and see, who we're related to, and
So here's the thing is, I just
Hannah Morgans. Go ahead.
I think the thing that I mean, and I don't mean that they have to have their own database separate. That they just got to support a database, because what I've been trying to do, and I'm having difficulty getting through to whoever I need to. But I wanted to establish an account for the Eftychia project, but then all of those people in that account would still match anybody else that's in that database, right? So what I want them to do, what my opinion is if they would support us in collecting this DNA from these families, give us the kits or buy the kits for us, somehow make arrangements to do that, and then we can and for them to supply maybe a little money or something to have someone who would oversee that, like to make sure if somebody matched that they knew or something like that, just to see how all, to keep track of all of it. Because a lot of these Greek people, when I go and do this DNA, they don't know what to do with it when they get the results. They don't know who's important and who's not, because they don't understand it. So they basically have me manage their DNA. But however, with 75 almost people now, I can't go look at their DNA every single day and see who they match and who they don't. I get those emails, you've got new matches or whatever. So I think the objective here for me, my opinion is, maybe we can get the Greek government to partner with the Eftychia project and buy DNA kits for us, and promote the fact that there are free DNA kits for these families and for these adoptees, and that they can do that. Now, the other thing that I've tried that needs to be done is, like, whatever DNA company, say they partner with MyHeritage, okay, and they decide to give us all, free MyHeritage kits for everybody that wants to do the DNA. So then the thing would be to encourage every single Greek adoptee who's done 23andMe and Ancestry to upload it to MyHeritage, because you can. So that would be, and that's what I was thinking. To me, that seems like it works better, because the government, if they set up their own whole database, can you imagine? That would take years. We'd all be dead by the time that happened. So w
who was the gentleman with AHEPA on the broadcast that Greg Contos did with Ancestry that said they were going to help establish a database.
Well,
Remember
they're
you
just
seen that
trying
link?
to, I think they're basically just doing it for genealogy. Like it's more of a genealogy thing than it is like a DNA database. It's more of they're trying to get all the Greeks to do their genealogy so they know where their families, who all their family tree is and all
Okay.
that stuff. I don't think it's so much a database of DNA. I think they're just trying to encourage people. I don't know what and I haven't heard any more about that actually.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you say. They're going to make a big splash and say, yeah, hey, look, we're going to be doing this, but what's the timeline?
Yeah. And so, that's why I said really and truly, it's been, people have been great about giving us DNA kits, donating them. You have actually donated quite a few. We're almost through all those now, but
Good. I have to donate some more for Christmas again.
well, that'd be great. A lot of people have donated it. We bought some as we go along. We bought some when we got low on stuff, because if you're a nonprofit, you got to spend some of the money, right? So not that we have a lot, but we bought DNA kits at various times for that. So it's been and we've had some success. Like we matched two sisters, an adoptee with her sister in Greece. And the adoptee was also stayed in Greece. She was adopted the same time period we were, but she didn't ever leave Greece. So and there's other people that have come very close with like second cousins and stuff like that, which is helping them try to figure out their relationships and all. So it's a helpful thing. But like I said, whoever we get, even if they're looking for somebody, if they turn out to be one of your second cousins, that's really close. That would be helpful, because these people it only behooves us to get as much Greek DNA out there as possible, because we're all related to somebody like that. So it can't hurt anything. One of us is going to wind up being related to somebody we didn't even suspect, or they didn't expect they were related to us. So I think that having the government do anything by itself is pointless, because they're not going to do something. And I agree with you on that. I agree that we have databases. I think if we can get them to partner with us and provide the kits and provide enough money to give someone in Greece who could, keep up with all of the, actually we have a spreadsheet with everybody's, stuff on it right now. So we have, we keep a spreadsheet with everybody's name, who tested, all their numbers, all the ones we've uploaded to MyHeritage and to GEDmatch and all of that. So somebody could oversee all that kind of stuff. And then that would kind of, if it was a government backed program where they could give us some money for expenses, for gas, for tolls, for all the things when we go and drive around all these places to collect the DNA. Because again, they are not really sure what to do with it when you send them the kit. Some of them I've had to mail kits back during the pandemic, because I couldn't go out of our prefecture, and I had to go in and try to translate the instructions to Greek, because they still had questions. They weren't sure. Well, am I supposed to do this? They didn't know what to do. So, just to get some help from the government to make this where it's an easier way to do that, to me, is the way to go. Now, I don't know about you guys, what you guys think, but that's what I think.
I'll go for it again. What about AHEPA and Lou Katzis? What about approaching them?
I've already approached AHEPA. I wrote a letter on behalf of all of us from the Eftychia project as the president of the project, and the AHEPA never answered. I wrote to AHEPA. I actually copied both the executive director for AHEPA, because I sent it to Horiatis, the Supreme President, and I copied the executive director of AHEPA and the executive director of the Daughters of Penelope, and never heard back from any of the three. Greg Contos did say he was going to contact that AHEPA guy that had something to do with the DNA, the genealogy thing, to see if he could get him to help us at some point. So I haven't heard back from Greg on that one. But I think we should probably just, the AHEPA in Greece, I think, is willing to help us, because I do have contacts with them. I do know people in the AHEPA in Nafaktos, and they were telling us that they would like to help us. So maybe I think we'll get more out of the AHEPA in Greece than we're ever going to get out of the AHEPA. We're not going to get anything out of the AHEPA here. I don't see any point where they say, oh yeah, we were involved in this, let us help you do what we can. I just don't see it happening.
Well, I kind of see with I understand that, but I'm kind of with Teresa as far as accountability. I mean, the people that, you know, mishandled our adoptions, because they didn't really handle them, they certainly mishandled them.
Right.
They're not around. I mean, so, you know, the American AHEPA organization, they need to, you know, show that they're separate and that they didn't do it, and, you know, let's move on, but, you know, certainly be helpful.
Right. Well,
I know I'm preaching to the choir, so I apologize.
No. It's fine. It's absolutely true. We actually, you know, I didn't, when I sent the letter, and I'll be happy to give y'all copies of it. It was like, I didn't say anything bad to them. I just said, you know, rightly or wrongly, Greek adoptees feel like via HIPAA, basically, you know, when they were asking for help about when searching for their families, that they basically turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to them and didn't acknowledge any of their part in what had happened, that the HEPA had been involved, and that, you know, all we're asking for is a statement of support from the HEPA in our quest to get all of this that we need, our records and our other things. And they didn't respond. And I was like, I'm certainly, you know, I've been around enough to know you got to be diplomatic. So I didn't say anything, you know, rude or unkind. And I didn't say you did this, you know, but I just kind of implied it a little bit. But they didn't respond. And I'm just like, you know, whatever. I mean, that's just as far as Lou Katzos, you know, I know Lou, he's been supportive of us, but I wrote him a letter too, and he didn't respond to it either. So,
Wow.
you know, I don't know what his, I mean, cause he's donated to us and everything. So, but I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard back from him since I sent him a letter. He told me he got it, but he didn't do anything. I was figuring maybe he could talk to the HEPA, but you know, you know, that's why I say we can't depend on people here in the U.S. to do it. We got to take the bull by the horns and do it ourselves, because, you know, you can depend having all these people. Like I say, we're the adoptees. We're the ones who own this, and we need to push for it. It's like, it's having people talk on our behalf. That's great, but we're the ones, it should be our voice that's heard. That's what I feel. I feel like we're the ones that need to do this. It's not somebody else. We're the ones it directly affects.
That's a good segue. I'll yield my time to Michael. I see his hand up.
Hi, Mike.
Hello. I just want to know if the Greek government is going to be willing to use any DNA results for proof of citizenship. Is there any talk about that?
That's a real good question. And that was brought up when I watched that dual citizenship seminar last year. The guy goes, you know, he mumbled a few things about, well, I don't know. We'll have to look into that. Maybe DNA, blah, blah, blah. And then they never mentioned it again. So it's pretty crystal clear. They had never even thought about adoptees wanting citizenship, nor had they thought about how they were going to figure this out. And DNA, the problem is like, just because I would think if you have DNA that leads you directly back to your family, maybe that would be some sort of swaying point or something. But most of us, I don't know, how many, do all of you have your Greek passports from when you came over? Does everybody have theirs?
I do. I've got birth certificate, passport, but you know, I get hung up in the courts there because they don't have anything that proves that my name now is my name.
Nick's holding up his passport over there. Sorry. Yeah. So, you know, here, I wrote an article about this last year, that, you know, the one thing most of us have that prove we're Greek citizens is our Greek baby passport that we came over with. And yes, all of our names have been changed, but as far as I'm concerned, and this is one thing I've talked at length with people about, is that if you can prove that chain of how your name got changed, you know, because a lot of us didn't get our names changed till we got naturalized. Mine got changed before that, but that's something my dad did in the Texas court. So a lot of people got their name officially changed when they were naturalized. So you got proof that your name was changed, and guys don't change theirs after they, you know, you keep your name. A lot of times we change ours. So in some cases, like if we have our marriage certificate and all that kind of stuff, if you've got the whole chain to me and you've got that passport, that proves who you are, you know, and you've got your adoption decree and you've got your birth certificate, which some people don't have, but you've got. If you can prove that whole chain, in my opinion, we don't need to go to court. We don't need to spend money. They just need to give us our dang citizenship. You know, I mean, that's what I think needs to be done. And that's
Well, one would think.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got that much proof, you ought to be able to do something about it. You know what I mean?
That's what I would think. That I've got the naturalization. I've got the petition for the naturalization. I got the birth certificate, and I just keep getting pushback.
Well, and the problem is, and I think, Mike, a lot of this is that these lawyers really don't know how to do this. I know plenty of people who've spent thousands of dollars over like years and still have nothing to show for it. Like you, you're one of them I'm talking about, but I know other people that they're in the same boat. So that's a problem too. And now they're getting the lawyers involved in everything else that we're doing, including records, because now PICPA, if any of y'all came through PICPA, which is the Greek social service, and a lot of people were fostered out through PICPA and then adopted. Now PICPA is telling people, well, we can't give you your records unless you obtain a Greek lawyer and they ask for them. Now, if you ask me, someone from PICPA is getting a kickback from some Greek lawyer, because I don't know that for a fact, but that's typical how stuff works in Greece. I mean, it just does. Greece is all about who you know, not what you know. It's even worse than here. So, these lawyers are getting involved in all of this stuff, and they don't need to be involved. And that's the thing. And I think Greek lawyers in general really don't know how to get adoptee citizenship. I think they really don't have a clue, and all of them do something different. What one lawyer tells one person, somebody tells another. I know people that spent like over $10,000 doing this and still don't have anything to show for it. So it's difficult.
What about those of us that have our pictures in the newspaper from the trial? Would that work?
I mean, that helps. Like anything that proves who you are, and if you can, they're supposedly at the consulate, you can go and get some paper if they will attest to the fact that you and that baby are the same person, or that name, if like whatever name you had then and whatever name you have now are the same person. But getting them to do that, that's another question. Like there are paper because some people, in Greece, people keep their maiden name, women tend to. So like that was the trouble with mine. I was Linda Carol Forrest in Greece still. Once I got my name changed from Eftychia over there, I was Linda Carol Forrest in Greece, and I'm Linda Carol Trotter here. That's not the same person. I mean, it is, but it's not, it doesn't look like it on paper. And then I had to go to court to change my name. It cost me like 700 euros to go to court to get my name changed, so it was like, and then it was a lot of other expense too, because I had to go to special registry office and register my marriage and all this other stuff. It was crazy. So by the time you do all that stuff, it's just like, it gets expensive. And that's why I said we shouldn't have to pay a darn dime to get our citizenship. They need to make a bill. They need to say, this is how you do it. This is streamlined. Or which the guy, our member of parliament that we've been working with, told me that we could, maybe they could come up with a bill, because remember during the Cold War, they kicked out a bunch of people that were leftists and stripped them of their citizenship. So a few years ago, they gave all those people their citizenship back, because they were all born in Greece. They should have their citizenship just like anybody else. And so, but they did it with a bill and then listed all of their names. And he said something, if we can do that for that situation, maybe we can do something like this for your situation. The problem is like, unless people are following, there's some Greek adoptees, every day there's new ones that pop up that I'm seeing that I didn't know before. So how do you get the word out to all them to get a list of people to put it on there? I mean, there'd be an initial list, but then what about everybody after us? So there has to be some streamlined, non-bureaucratic way to get a citizenship, and then whoever comes after us can still get it too. And it's not based on just a bunch of list of names. So, that's the thing with that. So I don't know the answer for the lawyer stuff. I just feel like they are grasping at straws, and they really don't know either. I think sometimes they're stringing you.
Wouldn't there inmate?
I think they're trying to get money from you because you're an American. They think you're loaded. Some of them do that. They really do that.
Wouldn't
So-
our inmate numbers on our papers be enough to prove our citizenship from the orphanages?
I don't think just because you got your numbers is going to make a difference. I think it's going to have to be, you're going to have to show your progression of your name change. Like, this is what you came over with. This is what you're
Yeah,
naturalized with. This is your married name. Here's your marriage certificate. And this is what, here's your American driver's license, your American passport and all that to show. Here's my baby passport if you have it. And then I think if you can show the progression, they shouldn't make us do anything. And I think they should, because the proof of your citizenship, for those of you that may not know, the proof of your citizenship is in your family registration in your municipality where you were born, generally. So I have what they call a merida. It's a family merida. It's family registration in Nafactos, which is a municipality that my village belongs to. And on those registrations, it's that basically the mayor of that municipality declares that you've been a citizen of Greece since the day of your birth. And then your name is listed and your parents are listed and all this other stuff. So then you have to register your marriage to get your if you took your husband's name to get that, you got to register the births of your children. And if they're adults, they get their own medidas because they're adults already. So it's very complicated with all this. And and then it's time consuming and it's costly because if you don't live in Greece, you got to make trips over there to do that. And a lot of times the consulates say they'll do it for you, but evidently their registration process is not working like they thought it should. And how many of you have called the consulates and can't get an answer, or sent emails and can't get an answer like months at a time? I have. I would imagine all of you have. So
You're talking about the consulate in this country.
yeah, in this country. Absolutely. Like, how many of you called them incessantly? They never answer the phone, or they never call you back, or they never answer your email.
Yeah.
And when we talked to the Greek embassy, and when I talked to the assistant to Ambassador Papadopoulos, he admitted to me, he said, our consulates aren't good at much of anything except issuing passports. And that's coming from the Greek embassy in Washington, the head of all the consulates. He said, unfortunately, they're not good at registering anybody for anything. He said, I'm well aware of all these consulates that never call you back and stuff. And he said, we are trying to fix that. He said, he said they were appalled when they got my letter that, of the snide, nasty things people at consulates had said to us, like, you're nearly not Greek and all that kind of stuff. He said, we have addressed that with them, that they are to treat you just like any Greek citizen and they are to help you. They're not supposed to insult you and they should respect you. So at least he said, we're trying to change that attitude. But again, it's going to take time to change all that. But, the consulates aren't going to do anything. Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, we should be able to do all of this here in the US and not even have to go to Greece to do it. But at this point, I don't know. I think it's going to, like I said, it's going to take an act of parliament just to say, here's the pathway for Greek citizenship for all adoptees. Done, finished. Everybody turn in these papers, you're a citizen. I mean, that would be the easiest thing. I don't know why they need to make it hard.
If I ever get my citizenship, the first thing I'm going to do is apply for that job at the Greek consulate, because that's a cake job because they don't do anything.
I agree with you on that. I'd love to have their pay and sit on my butt and
Right?
do nothing all day because they don't answer phones and they don't answer emails. So what do you do?
Yeah, they're usually on
Play with the
vacation.
phone? Yeah, I don't think they do much.
Linda.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Again, with my disclaimer that I am not an adoptee, but you're preparing this whole presentation for the Greek government. And to throw a wrench in this, have you ever considered that maybe because there's such this huge list of things on there, that at one point it is just so scary for them, they will just keep this in perpetual motion and really not doing anything? And whereas you can almost hang your hat on existing law and just hold their feet to the fire to start with, you have laws in place for these
Right.
people.
Well, that's part of the thing in this presentation, and I will certainly send you guys copies if you want when I get it finished, because I'm right in the middle of trying to get it done.
DNA and database is frightening for them over there. I know that for a fact. It is absolutely frightening, especially on the government level. They don't.
Right. So
they're freaked out about that.
yeah. So the way I'm approaching this for and I've done this with the help of some other adoptee organizations. They've given me some ideas about how to write this and present this, is that not just demanding that we get something, underneath each one, I'm writing the solutions that we would like to see for it. And in other words, like for the DNA database, we'd like to have a collaboration between us and the Greek government where they support us, but they don't have to administer anything. In other words, look, it doesn't cost you much, just buy some DNA kits, you know. So with the records, we've already made some headway with the records. So we'll continue to work with the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs on the records. And I've included that in there. But the other thing, you know, I've included the other things that need to be done, like digitizing all the records. These records are not digitized. The only people that have any digitized records at all is like the ISS. And they're working on digitized. They have a digitized list of all of their files, and they're working to get all of those digitized. They don't have them all yet, but they're doing that. All these other Greek institutions should have done this a long time ago, because all these records are in boxes somewhere and they're going to deteriorate over time. Pretty soon we won't have any records. So stuff like that is what we're listing as like, this is what we need. So we're not making like impossible demands or making, that's why I said we need to put our heads together and figure out to tell them how to do it, because they'll be, if you don't tell them how you think this needs to be done, then they'll spend forever trying to figure out how they would do it. I just know, and you do too, but I know how they are. I mean, so, you know, we basically have a list of, you know, those 4 or 5 things, but we're also trying to tell them, here's the easy, simple way to do this. And just like with the citizenship, here's, you know, they have the whole progression of this, and this, then that should make it easier. And then we should be able to get our citizenship with no cost to us, because we didn't, you know, it wasn't our fault we got sent off from Greece, you know, and stuff. So I understand what you're saying, because I know how the government is. But if you only ask for one thing, that's all they're going to do. They're not going to do anything else. And then you'll have to do it all over again and try to get back in there to talk to somebody else again. I think because these different ministries are in charge of different stuff. So they, you know, the Ministry of the Interior is in charge of citizenship. The Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs are in charge of the records. The government in general just needs to acknowledge what happened and to say, yeah, we're sorry, we're going to do what we can. I mean, that'd be real easy. Mitsotakis could just say that, you know. So it's just you know, I think if we do one thing, then it's like, if they get that done, then we'll have to start all over again for the rest of it. So if they kind of know this is all on the table, then maybe each different ministry can work on it, because the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs is already working on the other stuff. So yeah, I understand what you're saying though. I know how they are.
Yeah, I just thought if the only thing you ever got was them to abide by their own existing laws from '96, mm-hmm. most of everything that you're asking for would at least be starting the process.
Well, 96 would only get us the records. It wouldn't get us anything else. That would not get us to citizenship.
Right to citizenship, though. That's part of it, is it?
Well, the right to citizenship's in the nationality code, and that's what I'm putting in this thing about citizenship. Here's the things that cover us. We really don't need anything else. You just need to add that it covers Greek adoptees too, you know, or something like that. Because if you could add that to the national, but they would have to pass something in Parliament to do that. That's the thing. You got to have Parliament to pass some sort of bill that would amend that nationality code and give us, say exactly how you have to, what things you have to provide to do that. We shouldn't, you know, we were born there. We should automatically get the citizenship. If you can provide these papers, bingo, it's yours. And that would be simple. Unfortunately, Greeks love paperwork, and I'm not sure why. It's ridiculous. The more paper, the better. I mean, that's just how they are. So in terms of citizenship, I know one thing for you guys to think about too is, like, personally, in terms of your Greek identity, what does that mean to you? And like we've already talked about, some ways it would be mutually beneficial to you as an adoptee and to the Greek state. So does anybody want to expound on that before we move on to anything else?
I can.
Okay, go ahead, Teresa.
So as a kid, especially all my years growing up and really into my 30s and pushing my 40s, I didn't know who I was. And the American people that adopted me say things to me like, "Where are you from? You don't look like any of us." Oh, it really, I mean, I didn't know who I was. So having a Greek citizenship would mean to me personally, that's a big part of who I am. It's not all of who I am. I'm not less of a person because I have not yet been granted Greek citizenship, but by golly, that is who I am, and it should be recognized. And so when somebody says, well, who are you? Then part of my identity, I can say, I'm a Greek citizen. That's where I came from. That's where it started for me.
Right. I agree. And you know, and the thing about, I think the citizenship thing is such a sensitive issue for all of us, is because majority of adoptees generally have some issues with a sense of identity and belonging, because you are different. Like, you know, especially if you knew you came from Greece, you already knew you were not from America. And then depending on the type of upbringing you had and how inclusive your parents were, as far as like,
exactly,
not like the ones that didn't make a difference in it at all. I don't think those of us that had that really have as much of a identity issue as people who were constantly told they were Greek, and if it weren't for us, you would be in the gutter. I've heard that from other adoptees, and I think it's horrible.
yeah.
If it weren't for us, you would be still living in that orphanage and starving. If you know, and it's just like, you know, we shouldn't have to be made to feel like we have to be grateful because you pulled me out of the gutter. You know?
Exactly.
And so a lot of people have had that said to them, and I find that appalling. I can't imagine why people would spend all the time and expense to adopt a child and then mistreat it. It's like unconscionable for somebody to do that. So I think a lot of people, I think it's just the fact of having that tangible piece of that paper that says, I am Greek and I can go home whenever I want. I think that's a huge deal for a lot of people. I never suspected it would be a huge deal for me, as I never even cared about finding my family till after my parents passed away. But then being an only child, like many of you, I felt all alone. I was like, who am I? Like my anchor to that whole adoptive family, once my aunts and uncles are already all dead and my parents were gone, I didn't know where I belonged at that point. And I said, you know, it takes some of us longer to get there, but we all eventually do get to that point where we want the tangible recognition of the Greek state that sent us away, that we are Greek and we can come home whenever we feel like it. And that's what I you know, I could go on for hours about that, but you know, but yes, I understand totally the identity thing and how much it means to, I think, all of us to be able to claim that piece of Greece that belongs to us. So, you know, and we've talked about the mutually beneficial things to them, like, you know, yeah, it's like we'll be voting members of the diaspora. Hey, whoever makes this happen, we'll vote for your party, maybe. Okay. You know, I can't promise them, but you know, they'll think that anyway. You can always tell them that. We'll vote for you. We'll come and spend money there. We're going to buy property there. We'll do all this, you know. I mean, I've rented an apartment there for the last 3.5 years. I bought a car there because I have a car. We're planning on buying a house there, and then we'll pass that on to our children. I got my children registered recently, and so now when they go back to get their Maritas, they'll be able to get their IDs and their citizenship. So you can pass it on to your children, because a parent born in Greece, and your kids can be Greek citizens too. And then it's much easier for them to inherit anything that you have in Greece if they're Greek citizens, because they don't pay as many taxes and stuff on it. So it's mutually beneficial to all of us. And we'll, you know, I have friends that always call me, hey, when's the next time you're going to Greece? Can I come visit? So then a lot of times I take off a couple of weeks and play tour guide, and they go spend money. We spend money all over Greece. Multiply that by 4,000 of us doing that. It's a huge benefit to Greece. You know, so I think in terms of our identity and in terms of the mutually beneficial, like I said, it's kind of a symbiotic relationship. It's a win-win. Anybody else have any thoughts on the identity issue and any of that?
You know, I'm happy to say my parents never made a negative statement, and I always knew I was adopted, and it was a good thing. But to me, you know, being able to find everyone was one of the most important events of my life. And Yes, I'd like to have dual citizenship. So that's why I'm a part of this. I did have a question about press. You said there's been press in the past over in Greece. What type of stories were they when it came to this? Can you give me an example? I mean, I've seen your video and Linda, but what kind of stories are we talking about when you say there has been some press?
Well, we've had the Eftychia project's had a lot of press in Greece. Like if you go on the page, you can go back and look at all this stuff. We've been in like all the biggest papers. Like we've been in Tanea, which is got the largest. It's the oldest newspaper in Greece and has the largest distribution. It's sort of like the USA, the version of the US's USA Today. It's distributed all over Greece. We've had a couple stories in there. We've been in Demokratia, which are the big papers out of Athens. We've been in a lot of the other local papers. Every time one of those stories gets out there, all these Greek websites, these news websites pick it up. There was a big article in Bovary.Greece, which is an e-zine, but they have a huge following. And so that got a whole lot of attention. And so if you want to go back and look at those, so there's people that are aware of what we're doing. And every day we get Greek families coming to us saying, hey, we're looking for our lost child. Maybe it's one of your adoptees, So, I mean, it's like we're highly visible there. And so people know who we are. And we also have a lot of contacts there, but that's been built over time to see, what it takes time to build relationships, just like anything. So, that there's a lot of, I don't know. I mean, does that answer your question? I don't know.
Is there anything in these stories about the adoptees really wanting to become Greek citizens and really wanting to find their families? And look, here's some examples. These people are, like you were saying earlier, very productive members of society.
Yes.
There's nothing but
yes, because anytime I've been interviewed, I usually will tell, I always bring up the citizenship thing. I always bring up that, Greeks gave away their best kids, that all the adoptees are wonderful, productive citizens, that they all are very talented and smart and creative, and that, Greece would be greatly benefited by having all of us back. And so we talk about that too. Greeks are fascinated with adoption stories. I don't know. They just have this fascination with it, especially people who find their family. It's like a huge deal to them because Greeks are, in the long run, big on family. So, they've gotten very involved in all of this. And anytime, these stories come out, they pick them up and they put them all these like hundreds of little Greek websites all over Greece, all these news websites pick them up. And Greek websites have no problem like plagiarizing everybody's stuff, like taking pictures from other people, and they take the whole article, sometimes don't give credit for it, but it gets everywhere. So they're aware of the situation. The Greek people themselves are very involved in wanting to help with that. But they're also, it's just getting the word out to the people that matter. The Greek people are behind it. That's not a problem. And they're all fascinated with all of this.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, since I think I'm the only one on the panel right now from Greece, I want to say something to everyone. Since Eftychia came to Greece and found her family, there was a huge publicity. She's saying it, but you won't believe how much publicity the Eftychia project has in Greece. And in all her interviews, she is telling the state how much Greek orphans want their citizenship. Well, this has been the past 3 years, and she's done wonders in Greece. And I guess she's doing a great job there too. But it's very tiring. astonished about her energy every time she comes to Greece. Running around through the nation, giving DNA tests to families that are searching. We are searching also for two brothers. I guess maybe you guys all saw the story a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. The thing is that the scandal first came out in 1996 with the clinic of Eftychia. And that's where some people started to think about maybe one of our family members are in the scandal. There were prosecutions at that time, up to 2000. People did go to jail then, here. But it just faded away after the trials and everything. The past 3 years with the Eftychia project, this is starting to getting more well known in Greece that American orphans are looking for their families. So I think publicity is a big thing with the Eftychia project. I think her last trip, she had interviews also here. Every trip is publicity for the Eftychia project. And she is getting people here aware that orphans, adopted orphans, Greek orphans from America are looking for family, are wanting citizenship. And that's the main story with the government also, that she has been in touch with. So I think we're on a good path, and I think lots of closure is going to come out of this. That's all I wanted to say. Nice seeing all of you.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Nice.
Well, thanks, too. I was like, I'm embarrassed, but
No, don't be embarrassed. It's a great. It's for only 3 years. You've come a long way here.
thank you. I try.
She walks on the streets and people recognize her. So that's to tell you. Don't blush. It's true. It's true.
Good.
I don't know what to say after all that. Thank you. I appreciate it. But, it's not just me.
I'm not, it's the truth. It's the truth. Like, it's not only in her city of Nafpaktos that she's well known. It's everywhere, people from the TV shows, from the newspapers, they start to acknowledge that, oh, that's the lady from the States that found her family. And she's doing this and she's doing that. And, Eftychia has found her family, right? She, like, if it was somebody else and not her caring for all the Greek-born adoptees, why should she care, She's found her family and she's very happy and she's found her village. And it's it's really unbelievable how much they love her. But she is so caring for all the Greek-born adoptees that are still in the States and wants to help. And that's the big-hearted of all the project, the Eftychia project.
She's a rock star.
You're making me cry now. Thank you.
Don't cry.
Yeah, you guys realize this is not what I ever intended to do with my life, right? It was like, I never, when I went to Greece, I just told my husband, thanks to, I really appreciate that. That's very sweet. I told my husband recently, I said, would you ever thought 4 years ago that I'd go to Greece, find my family, I'd found the Eftychia project, you would meet all these firefighters, you would decide you needed to help the firefighters because they're so far behind, you found the first volunteer fire department in the Nafpaktos area and then come frequently to help and train with that. And now, like, we're planning on buying a house and doing all this other stuff. I said, would you ever thought 4 years ago that we'd be going to Greece and you would have been baptized Greek Orthodox, because he did get baptized Greek Orthodox, which I think is awesome. And for those of you who don't know, when he did get baptized, he had to take a Greek name. So what does he take? Eftychios, the male version of my name, Eftychia. So we're Eftychios and Eftychia. happiness and good fortune. So if we play the lottery, we should absolutely win. I mean, with names like that. So, but I would have never thought that all this would have happened 4 years ago.
I want to tell the friends here that we've been searching for, 15 years now. And we were at a dead end. We had done one DNA test. And we were almost not hoping anymore until we met Eftychia. And we see a little light in this black hole that we were in. We see a light in a tunnel that maybe through the Eftychia project, we can find our family also. So this is making us hope more, because there was a time that we had nothing and we still, we're hoping anymore. So that's seeing her running around and helping all these people through DNA and getting in touch with all government officials at orphanages and for citizenship and for everything. It's making us hope more every day. That's all I want to say. And I'm not going to make you blush anymore.
Thank you. I'm not the only one that does this, Guy. I am the only one that goes to Greece. I agree, but I have 3 other people who work on the board of directors who actually help too. So
I know that.
It's not just
they do help.
Yeah.
But the thing is that Greek families are in touch only with you, since you're the one that's coming here from the Eftychia project.
True.
Well, we have met Meryl and the other
Maria.
members and Maria, but you're here every month, so we're closer to you. And I'm talking about the Greek families here.
Yeah, and that's true. I am the one that generally interacts with them because I'm the one that goes. I have the ability to go to Greece every other month, pretty much. So that makes a difference. Thanks, Tula. I appreciate that.
Plus, I can tell you all that when she meets all these Greek families that are searching and hoping, this gets very emotional, right? Because all of us tell her our story. Like you tell your story as orphans. We tell our story as Greek families, and it's emotional. She's living her story every time at the beginning again. So it's very emotional meeting with all these people that see in Eftychia a hope to find family.
Thanks. It is extremely emotional. It's one thing to talk to them on Facebook, for them to text you, and most of them text me in Greek. I'm really good at texting in Greek. I'm just not very good at speaking it. But I can read.
You're good at speaking also. You're good at speaking.
I do really good with strangers because nobody's going to correct me. If I talk to my family, I can't even finish a sentence. They jump in and say,
it's the most difficult. It's the most difficult language in the world, and she's doing great. And I think all of you can learn Greek.
Okay, it's okay. But I get corrected by my family constantly, and I finally had to tell them, look, I have a Greek teacher. It's not you guys. Okay, let me finish the sentence. But with strangers, I don't have a lot of trouble. Because you have to speak Greek when you're all by yourself with people that don't speak Greek, and the majority of these families do not speak English. So, but I have to say, the most rewarding thing I do is go to see these families, to sit down, to listen to their stories, to help them do the DNA test. And then invariably they ask me to eat with them, and I get to sit there and eat homemade Greek food and drink homemade thipiro, homemade classy wine. It's like, for me, I think I get more out of it than they do. It's like getting a piece of that Greek childhood I missed back. That's exactly what it is for me. And I feel like I belong there. And that's a hugely emotional thing. And that's what I want. I'm going to cry now. That's what I want all of you to feel. I want all of you to feel that feeling, because it's so terribly incredible to do that and feel loved and feel accepted by the Greek people that you were sent away from. It's an amazing, amazing thing. And okay, we need to not be so sappy here.
Sorry.
Sorry. It's okay. It's okay.
Well, Linda, if I can just add, okay, I love that. And I think I have that feeling that you have, because I'm lucky enough to know all these relatives. And the strange thing is, it took my Greek mother 32 years from first contact to tell her family and her children who I really was, even though I had met many of them. But I don't even know how many relatives I have over there. We're Facebook friends, and I can really pass this information along and just really spread it more than I have been, and just, really share everything with them and get the message out there, because I can't even count how many Greek relatives I have.
Yeah, I agree, because every time I go, probably the same for you, David, when I come back to Greece, somebody says, "Oh, this is your cousin so-and-so. This is your Uncle Nikos." Like, who's he? Like, what do you mean? And you know how Greece is, like, your first cousin's, children are your niece and nephew, and then your cousin,
Right.
your mother's cousin is really your uncle, and all, So every time I go back to Greece, it's some new person. I was like, I don't know who this is, but hey, I'll hug you anyway, your family. So it's amazing how huge your family grows from each time you go.
And on this island, Naxos, where people are from, complete strangers will look at me and tell me the exact village I'm from. Not just that I'm from the island, they pinpoint a village of a few hundred people, and they're never wrong.
That's very similar to people from Epirus. They're like, they have a certain look about them, and people can tell you where you're from in that area. Like, oh, you're from so and so. So yeah, it's amazing. And Greeks know Greeks my whole entire life, and maybe some of you have the same experience. Growing up, everybody, are you Greek? Are you Greek? Are you Greek? And I was like, oh my God! I finally started saying no because I got tired of answering, and then I had to explain why I was Greek and I was adopted and all this stuff. And so I finally said, no, I'm not Greek. Leave me alone.
God.
So
Everybody thought I was Mexican.
Well, I got that in Texas because I do tan quite easily. And so in Texas, people would come up and start speaking Spanish to me, which I understood because I lived in Texas and I at one time could speak Spanish fairly well. I haven't had much practice lately because I've been devoting everything to Greek, since Spanish is not a language that's going to really help me in Greece. So, but yeah, it's an amazing experience to be there and to be able to, that's why I said I want all of you to have that same amazing experience too. Let me bring up my PowerPoint again, just for, well, if I can.
No, don't.
No, I have to, and I'll go back to the gallery view. Give me just a second. Let's see, let me go here and get to where I wanted to talk about. Whoops, that's the end. Didn't want that one. So where we go from, let's see, where we are, and I just wanted to do this quickly, where we are with what we're doing so far, so you kind of get like a general idea. So we received the support of the Member of Parliament, MP Stathis Konstantinidis Kozani. He's a member of the Greek Parliament. He did make a speech to Greek Parliament about, and included us. It was actually in a speech he was talking about, they were talking about giving the vote to the diaspora. But he also, and if you go back to the Eftychia project page, you can, just search Stathis and it'll come up the post that he's in, and you'll find the post with his speech. And it also quoted the relevant portion that he talked about, that we were, through no fault of our own, we were uprooted from our homeland, but the homeland was not uprooted from our souls, and that we deserve citizenship, and that we deserve to be recognized as Greek citizens. So if you go back and look at that, he's also trying to facilitate these appointments for us with the appropriate ministries. However, like I said, with the fires and stuff, that just kind of put everything on the back burner, and then they moved all the ministers around, so they've got to get in position again. We've also, as I said, received really great support from the Greek ambassador to the U.S., Madam Alexandra Papadopoulou. She is the one who facilitated our meeting with the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs regarding our orphanage and birth records, and that's as a result of that meeting, they started to work on a centralized process to make it easier to get our records and make it easier for us to request and to receive them, and give us all the information about where to get them and how to apply for them and all that stuff. So when I go back, I'm going to be keeping close tabs on all of that to make sure that we're, that's going to continue to get done. And they are the embassy is also providing continuing and ongoing support. The secretary of the embassy, who's her personal assistant, and it sounds like secretary, but he's like a very important person. He wants me to forward any emails we send to people, any letters, and if they can find a spot where they can jump in and help, then they're going to. And I will be contacting them about to facilitate some more of these appointments to see if we can't light a fire under some butts to get this going. So then I did meet a couple of months ago with the department head of orphanage and foster care, and this was the meeting that Madam Papadopoulos facilitated for us. And I met with them for 2.5 hours. They were shocked that we're having still so much trouble getting our records. I gave them a lot of anecdotal evidence from Greek adoptees, stories of people who've had these horror stories of trying to get records, and it took them 12 years or 2 years, or they had to threaten them with a lawsuit and media coverage and all of that, which shouldn't happen. We are continuing to prepare that formal statement to present to the Greek government because they have requested that. They want to know, well, what do you want? Write us a statement. Okay. And again, how that needs to be achieved, and we're working on that. We do have the Justice for Greek-born Adoptees Now petition on change.org. So, if you haven't signed it, go on there and sign it, and then, share it with everybody else and get them. We're almost at 1,000 signatures. So we need to, the more we can get, the better off, so we can present this as well. And then now the thing is, where do we go from here at this point? Like that's what we've done. That's where we are. So where do we go? So obviously, we have to have appointments with the appropriate ministries for citizenship and the DNA database, and developing a path to Greek citizenship, which would have to be a bill, and hopefully with the continued collaboration of Mr. Constantinides. We'll have a continuing collaboration with the Greek ambassador and the Greek embassy in DC, because even they admit the consulates don't do a lot. So I will frequently follow up with the department head of orphanages and foster care and see where they are in relation to August. In case you guys don't know, everybody in Europe goes on vacation in August, including everybody from Greece. So they all go on vacation. And so none of them get back till almost like the first week in September. So there really wasn't much you could do for most of August anyway there, because that's just the way, that's how they do their vacations. So I'll follow up when I get back with her. The other thing to finalize and prepare for this presentation of this formal statement to the Greek government, and what we need from you guys, any of you that have not done this, we need letters from you guys to the Greek government describing your adoption and the circumstances surrounding your adoption, and what having all these things, the transparency, the open records, the database, and especially the Greek citizenship would mean. And give us any anecdotal evidence of difficulties and obstacles you've encountered with the Greek consulates, orphanages, or any of the other institution when you're searching for records or family or trying to get citizenship. And you can, these letters are going to be included with the formal statement, and you can just address them to the government of the Hellenic Republic. That's fine to do. Continue to solicit signatures for the Justice for Greek-born Adoptees Now petition. Like, sign it and then get other people, share it with other people, share with many people as you can. The other thing that we're working on is collaboration with the Greek American delegation of the United States House of Representatives. We have I sent letters to all 6 of them. There's 6 there in the U.S. House of Representatives in both parties. And I sent letters to get a statement of support, to ask them for an individual statement, but also a joint statement of support. And we have been blessed that somebody that knows one of them personally has already spoken with that representative, and he is going to head up the effort to get a joint statement from them to present to the Greek government to help us to support us. So that's one thing we're working on. There's some upcoming press for our efforts in both the Greek and American newspapers, and I'll tell you guys more about that later. I've got there should be some articles coming out in the next few weeks. On Greek television, I did an interview the time before last for a Greek TV show on Mega TV. It's for Eleni Menagaki's show, and she's extremely famous, right, Tula? She's a huge star in Greece, and it's for her show.
She's number one.
Yeah, all these women watch it, right? It's a huge show. All the women in Greece watch this show. Like it's
Not
huge.
only.
So, so I did an interview. Of course, they asked me about my story. I'm actually, frankly, getting a little tired of telling my story, if you want to know the truth. And I'm sure everybody's sick of it because they've all heard it a million times. But, you know, Greeks are fascinated with this, and they generally have to say something about my story to say, why am I doing the Eftychia project? So they kind of bring that in. And at the end, she asked about what we were doing. I talked about the citizenship efforts. We were working with the government. So that'll get out to all these Greek people as well. So hopefully some of these government people are watching some of this stuff. And then also,
Did they tell you when this is airing?
sometime this month. I haven't heard exactly when, because the lady that did the segment didn't tell me exactly. So I'm going to have, I think she told me she would let me know, because they were working on it a couple of weeks ago, because I had to send her a bunch of videos and stuff that they wanted. So
What's her name again? What is her name?
the lady's name, she's Elena,
Eleni
Menegaki.
Menegaki.
Yeah, Eleni Menegaki. And she has
It's
a show on
a morning show.
Yeah, it's a morning show on Mega TV.
Okay.
So it's gonna be on Greek TV. If any of y'all, I have Greek TV, but not everybody does. So, and I will post it when it comes up. I'll post it on the project. But also, I have been in touch with a journalist who wants to do a mini documentary about our adoptions and do a little bit of investigative stuff into it, more than just like, oh, here's some adoption stories and aren't these sweet? You know, she wants to do some investigating into it about the HEPA, about, you know, any things that were, you know, fishy or illegal. And she wants to, it was originally supposed to be just an interview for a project she was doing on an oral history project, collecting oral histories all over Greece. And now she's decided they want to come to Naupaktos. They want to film an entire documentary, talk about what we're working on, all the things we're doing, and all of that. So, and also present this documentary to some film festival. So I'm like, okay, that can only help. Yeah. So those kind of things are coming up. We'll probably film this documentary, or at least part of it, when I go back this next time. We also want to submit a formal request for a delegation of us to speak before Parliament and to meet with both the president of Greece and the prime minister. Now, is any of that going to happen? I don't know. But hey, if you don't ask, you don't get, right? I mean, you have to ask. So
in the rate that you're going, it's going to be in the following year. By the end of 21, you will do this.
I hope so. Right? Like we need to get these people going. The other thing, okay, and then let me go back here. Let me get off the. All right, let me go back to the gallery view. So that's kind of like things you can do. So then I'm gonna also tell you, I'll have to go back to the other thing in a minute, but I want to tell you some things you can do yourself that it'll help us, it'll help you individually, it'll help us all collectively if you do some of these things. So let me go back to that quickly and tell you what I can make this thing work. I was like, okay. All right. So we can talk about this too, about where we go from here. The big thing is like, just think about this for a minute. We'll come back to it. Any suggestions of any additional items or issues that should be part of our agenda? But here's activism. This is where we get down to the nitty gritty and you guys do something, you know, not just, these are things you can do. Like, it's not, this isn't, like I said, this isn't my deal. This is our deal. It's not mine. It's not the Eftychia project. It's our deal to do this. So we're, like I said, we're just using a legitimate, recognized organization to push this. Write a letter for us to include with that formal statement. Write a letter. Write all your feelings about your adoption, whatever. You had a horrible one, you had a good one, whatever it is, and then tell them what all that means to you. To have all that, you know, the transparency, the open records, and especially Greek citizenship. And give anecdotal, you know, like I said, proof of like the difficulties you've had, not only with records and stuff, but just life in general and what that identity thing means to you. The more emotional, the better. I've had several letters that I know these people's stories inside and out, and they still made me cry because they talked about how much this being Greek means to them. So,
American
you know, make
members.
it emotional, because if it can make me cry and I already know your story, it's going to make someone else, it's going to tug at somebody else's heartstrings too. Sign the petition, and then get other people to share it with other people. If you are a constituent, if you're a constituent with one of the Greek American members of the U.S. House of Representatives.
You have a list of the Greek members?
Yeah, I should have had that, and I didn't think about that till now that you said it. I'll put up a list of the Greek members on the Eftychia project page. How about that? Will that help?
Please, and a link to the
Because if you're a constituent of one of
petition.
them, you can actually go online and send them an email. I
Sure.
couldn't send them an email because I'm not their constituent.
And I'm assuming some of them don't have Greek names, so we may not know who they are.
Okay, well, I will tell you, one of them is John Sarbanes. You know, he's the son of Paul Sarbanes, who was a senator for a long time. So John Sarbanes, Nicole Maliatakis, she's from New York. Charlie Crist, he's Greek, whether y'all knew that or not, from Florida. Gus Villarikas, he's Greek, he's from Florida. There's two more. I can't think of their names. But I have the whole list, so I'll put the list up. So if you happen to be,
What about the White House spokeswoman?
who, Psaki?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't written to her, but I'm not sure she'd do anything anyway.
But she's Greek.
Somebody wants to write to her, go right ahead. She got her hands full managing whatever she's managing now. I think the representatives are much more, because they're Greek. I know she's half Greek, but I mean, I think because they're in government and they're like representatives, it makes a difference. So if you happen to be one of those, and we can give you a customizable template with the supporting material that you can send them. So, because I sent them all letters with supporting material because I had to send it by mail. And I know Sarbanes did get his, because the person that's helping us with this, he's a friend of his and he knows he got it and he's the one he's talking to. So hopefully that's going to help. If you're not a constituent, okay, of one of these Greek American members of the U.S. House, then write to your own representative, explain your situation about your adoption and all that, and ask them to speak with the Greek American representatives to ask for support, because you can do that even if you're not a constituent. You can get online and send an email to your own representative and ask them for help. So we can give you a template for that if you need it. Here's another thing you can do. Contact your local newspapers, television, radio, to ask if they would consider doing a story or an interview about your adoption, the circumstances surrounding it, and our fight for what's ours. And if you're successful to get them to do something, send us copies of the articles and links so we can forward them to the government officials and include them with the statement. Because that's another powerful thing. You know, press is pretty powerful if you can get them to do what you want.
Please allow me to help you tell people how to deal with that. That's what I do for a living. I've been working in the press for 40 years. So I would like to help people know how to approach news departments. I can help with that.
That is awesome, Steve. I love you. You're awesome. That is fabulous. Okay, so there, guys, we got Steve. He's able to help us with that. So I'll talk to him more about that too. But then, yeah.
Okay, since he didn't say it right, sorry, Steve. He's a TV producer. Sorry.
So yeah, Steve is very familiar with all of this. So thanks, Steve. We appreciate that a lot. That's very helpful. The other thing is to join the group of adoptee leaders of this effort and be an integral part of the planning, the strategy, and the execution of this. And then you'll keep abreast of all the accomplishments and developments. And like I said, all it requires is a passion for our cause and a willingness to actively participate in some periodic collaborative Zoom meetings. That's all it requires. If you're passionate about it, you want to be like in on trying to figure out and get all the updates on what we're doing, then, you know, let me know and, you know, send me a message and we'll get you on the mailing list. And usually what I do is I just send out a group email and I'll say, okay, we're gonna have a Zoom meeting on this day and can you make it? And we're going to talk about what the progress is so far. What do you guys think we need to do next? That sort of thing. If you haven't already, I think most of you have, like and follow the Eftychia project, share our posts regarding our fight, and encourage your fellow adoptees to join and support our effort. You know, let's as I said, let's speak with one voice for the benefit of all of us so we can get what we've been denied for way too long. So that's, that's what you can, these are things you guys can do yourself that will help everybody. And then lastly, just a reminder that our next conversation will be Saturday, November the 13th, 2021. And it's basically Greek coffee hour featuring Greek adoptee and Greek family stories at the same time. Because I felt like I wish we'd have had more time at the reunion, because I felt like that was such an important thing. I think a lot of people got a lot out of that. And it was very heart-wrenching to hear some of the stories of people, but I think it brings us all together and makes us closer. And we all have that bond, because like I said, all of our stories are different, yet they're all the same. We came from the same background. We came from basically the same circumstances in a lot of cases. And so I think that was a really a wonderful experience to be able to share those stories. And I'd like to hear more stories from all of you, because I don't know everybody's story. I know some people's, but I don't know everybody's. And I'd like to hear stories from like Tula has a great story about, because she's a Greek family representative. So I'm sure all of us have wonderful stories. There's so many of us. So I'm hoping that you guys will all participate. And of course, I'll send out reminders on the Eftychia project page when we'll do that again. Steve, do you can you put like your contact information or something in the chat or something where people can contact you, or do you want to contact?
Well, I put it in the chat. It might be a little difficult, but I can give it to you. You can give it out to anyone, because it actually does make a difference depending on where you are in your story and what has happened, especially in recent years, finding people or connecting with people on how the press look for stories.
Right.
And to be concise, I will help anyone who's looking to contact their local TV, radio, or newspaper station.
Okay.
So I'll send that to you. I'll put it in the chat right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll stick it in the chat, because this records the chat. So
okay. I forgot about that.
Yeah. If you'll put it in the chat, I'll have it for later too. Like it records the chat like in text form or something, because I get that when we're done. So and then any of you, but really and truly getting your story, talking about your story, talking about our fight to get what we deserve is super helpful, and then, like I said, if any of you, because the more evidence we can give the government that it's not just a few of us, it's a whole lot of us that want this,
I've got an idea. I don't know if I'm just talking on the top of my head right now on things that we can do. How about if we flood with emails the Greek archives here of all of the adoptees?
They ignore one. They ignore one, so they can ignore 100.
Well, now I have to say the GAC in Athens is really helpful. They're not the problem. It's the other regional ones that are. The GAC in Athens, like I can send them an email, say, okay, here's all the adoptees I have power of attorney for. Here's copies of that. And they'll do the research. They find all the papers and they tell me, give me an appointment, come pick it up. And they don't have a problem. In fact, they're the ones, when I was going to Thessaloniki, they called ahead to Thessaloniki, said, Anna, who runs the reading room, called Thessaloniki, said, hey, this lady's coming to Thessaloniki. She needs to get these, the orphanage file from because some of the records from Stylianos are evidently in the GAK in Thessaloniki. Not all of them, but some of them are. And the court records are in the court, actually. They're not at the GAK there. So she said she's coming. She has a power of attorney, and it's legal. She has the apostille, and I just want to tell you, here's her name, and she's going to come and get this for this particular guy. And they proceeded to tell her that, oh no, they will not give the lady with the power of attorney anything because she's not the adoptee. And Anna argued with them and said, but we all accept powers of attorney with the apostille in English, and the adoptee can't come to Greece, and she's his representative legally here. And, it's just like him standing there. Oh, I don't care. We're not giving it to her. So when I went to Thessaloniki, I did some other things. I had DNA to collect and other stuff, but I didn't get to go to the GAK. Now, and they were and the people in Athens were very upset about it because they said, technically, we're their boss. Again, here's the inconsistency in the same institution. The boss, the big one in Athens, supposedly is kind of the boss of all the other regional ones, and they all do whatever they want. They all do their own thing. And that's another thing that makes all of this extremely difficult, because and that's what I told the people when I went to meet with the lady that's over the orphanages and foster care. It's the inconsistency that causes the greatest difficulty, because nobody does the same thing. They just do whatever they want. You know, the boss says, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to do this. Even though they have a procedure, they just don't follow it. As Teresa said, they need enforcement. They don't enforce their own rules. They don't enforce their own rules. And
well, that's what the Greek families have. The greatest problem in Greece is we have no right to search any files of adoptees.
And that again is another problem that maybe we can make some headway on eventually. I don't know. That's going to be more difficult though, because adoptees, yes, we can get our records, but families don't have any rights, and that's sad, because there are plenty of families who are looking for someone who really want to find that person. And if they only had a right to get the record, and they know, even if they know where the child was, like they even knew they went to the Patras orphanage or whatever, they can't, most of the time they won't tell them. The only way that you ever find out anything as a family, you have to know somebody who tells you something, even though they're not supposed to. And that happens too. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. It's in Greece, like I said, it's like, someone, you can get stuff done. You don't know somebody, then good luck to you. And that's not fair, not at all. It's not fair, but that's just the way it is.